Hey guys, ghazzyTV here with another build guide. Today we're going to be updating the Mage skeleton version of my Lich Queen build guide. It's been a while since I had a standalone video for this specific build or this build type. So I'm going to talk about it real quick and then I'm going to show you a map. As you might have noticed already, the life is only 4.2k, and this is because first, I'm only using one ring, and that is because I'm not leaving level 80 right now. I'm level 76. All my skill points I have left will be spent into life nodes. And so yeah, I'm going to show you a tier 16 map, Lexajoris, Influence, Drox. I have killed Conquerors, I've killed tier 16 Guardian bosses like Minotaur, Hydra, and Chimera with this build. When it was level 72 to 76, I don't remember exactly which level I did it with. So it's perfectly fine. The budget is very, very, very cheap. I'm wearing one expensive item. I'm going to talk about the gear before I show you the gameplay footage and a few variations of it. In the description below, there will be a link to the forum guide for this build, and in there will also be a link to a video, which whenever my channel is sorted, because YouTube's still working on getting my channel sorted, there's a long list of problems. I'll link some information about that in the description below as well. So there will be a video for the melee version, which is, in my opinion, better. But this one was really fun to play, and it's very low budget. So first up, we're going to talk about the skill tree real quick. I'm using Mage skeletons through the use of Dead Reckoning, which allows me to have skeletons summoned as Mage skeletons, and that is my generic clearing minions. And then I'm using Spectres for single target. Now, you can get something like this where Corrupted Blood can't be inflicted on you for about 10 Chaos, or you can just buy the Clean Jewel or a Corrupted one for like an Alch Orb or a Chaos, and that's very cheap to even get at an endgame state for Corrupted Blood immunity. I'm using some Cluster Jewels, don't really need it for this build, but I'm using it for fun. I got some HP and I picked up some Renewal for minions deal double damage when they're at full life. Not really needed, you can skip this entirely, it's not very important. What is important are two things: getting your Spectre Gem up to level 25, as well as using Death Attunement. Those are the two main things. And then I'm using the Leech node for Minion Leech here. Not super important, but it's really good. And after that, I'm just picking up life nodes, going down for Soul Steel. Everything is there. And I'm also using a Chance to Blind on attacks, which is only from my golems. So I don't really see that too often. However, I am using a... wait, did I buy two Blind Jewels? I was supposed to have a Hinder Jewel somewhere. I must have fucked that one up. So I'm supposed to have a Hinder Jewel that slows the enemies down, which again is very, very cheap, as very few people use that kind of jewel with life on. So all of this is pretty cheap. The chest piece I'm using is Slam, so this one actually is pretty trash. But the modifier you're looking for is +1 maximum number of Spectres. This is a mod that only exists on items that are dropped in Delve. So you have to find something like this. What I did was I looked for something with plus maximum number of Spectres and life, and that was pretty expensive. So I searched for one with plus maximum number of Spectres with an open prefix and benchcraft life on it. This is how I get 5 Spectres. And then the next stage is to get the 25 level of your Spectres. This is usually done through a handful of different ways, but I did it with having a wand or a weapon that gives you plus level all spell or minion skills. This can be expensive, you don't necessarily need it. You can live with a low budget version of going with 4 Spectres. It's not going to do too much of a big difference when you're playing it at a low budget state. And then I am using a plus level of all raised Spectre Gems, pair of boots. These were actually expensive. For a low budget state, you can just use Bones of Ulrur, which cost about 1 Chaos Orb. The only difference between that and these boots is that I have a little bit more life. I think it's like 20 more life or something. And I have a little bit more movement speed. So I paid about an Exalted for this, but you can buy the low budget boots for 1 Chaos and lose a tiny bit of movement speed, which you'll barely notice. I'm using a Jinx Juju, very, very, very cheap, and this is to further have some defensive mechanisms. This one's taking 10% of the damage I take from hits to my Spectre's life, which is evenly spread among my 5 Spectres, which are not gonna touch them. So that's one of my defensive mitigations I'm using. I'm also using a Rumi's Concoction, and I have a Bone Offering. And that's basically how I'm triggering Desecrate, Bone Offering, as well as a conductivity for the lightning damage to my damage application, but also mitigating. I'm also crafting a minimum endurance charge on both my rings, but since I'm only wearing one ring, I only have one endurance charge. This is to further mitigate damage. Now, the problem with this version that I'm playing is I'm doing this a little bit squishier, but I'm going to do a tier 16 level 76. That's because I went all the way through here to get Necro Aegis, because the damage and speed of having Frenzy and Power Charge to minions is actually very, very big. So I prefer to do it this way, which is why I'm not entirely block capped. You can get close to block cap if you're using something like a Magna Eclipsis, which is a really good shield for this, not too expensive either. See if you can find it there. This gives you an Elemental Aegis, and Elemental Aegis is something that's triggered automatically, gives you another 1000 EHP versus elemental damage, so that's very, very nice to use as well, especially for a low budget state. But I'm using Victorious Charity, costs like a Chaos Orb or two, and then the belt I just went with High Life, and I accidentally got some extra rest on it, and that cost me 5 Chaos, I think. There was something similar around 5 to 25 C, but you can get them much cheaper than this if you lower the HP a teeny tiny bit. And the ring was the same thing there. I got some attributes and I got fire damage to attacks. And the reason that's important is because you want your shield charge to have fire or cold, but no lightning damage because of elemental equilibrium. So you can increase the damage enemies takes from lightning damage from your Spectres, which are Baranite Spectres, which I'll explain before we do this map. It's a bit tricky. The gloves. I went with a pair of gloves with minion damage and life and resistances. It's 18%. I think it can go up to like 25 or 30% or something. You don't need it. So if you want to keep it low budget, just skip that. Don't care about it. Just get life and some rest and you're done, and that's very cheap to get. If you want to go mini damage, it's going to cost a little bit more. The difference is very, very small though, so it's up to you what you do there. So the most expensive piece I have here is my helmet. As you can see, it has concentrated effect and minion damage supported. Now I went with level 20s. However, if we do a quick search of what you can do, you search for a helmet, you do socketed gems are supported by level, bam, and then do this, minion damage and concentrated effect. You do this search, and you can see that you can buy something like this for 1C. However, you might want to have life on it. Then I usually do this and do a count search with one with either a life of a preferable number, about 50 plus should do, or an open prefix slot, because then you can benchcraft life on it. So you do this kind of search, and you'll land on that you can buy this for a 3 chaos, you can buy this for 4 chaos. You might want to get a little bit higher numbers on these. Let's say you want to have at least level 18, the difference is not going to be that big. And it's going to cost you a little bit more currency, but again, not too much. This is with fire resistance, you can bench life on it, level 20 conk effect, 5 chaos. It's not expensive. It looks more expensive than it is, but it is the most expensive because I found it on a bone helmet. That's why it's expensive. So getting these modifiers are easy. You can even get this with a lab enchant that actually would benefit your build. Anything from skitterbots to your carrying golem to your specters to your skeletons. All of that would work. Even getting some aura reservation would not be a bad thing. So that would be a preferable enchant you can get, which would arguably be better than the bone helmet base. So it's not too expensive to get this type of helmet. And that's it. Quick overview of the links. Desecrate, Bone Offering. You can use this for Flesh Offering if you want to increase your damage or DPS and clear speed. I'm using Bone Offering for the defense, which is one of the reasons I'm able to do tier 16 maps at level 76. Might get one shot, we'll see. And then I'm using Conductivity for cursing enemies. And then we have a Carrion Golem, which is for Feeding Frenzy. And then I have Convocation and Flame Dash in there for mobility. And speaking of mobility, I'm using Shield Charge, Fast Attacks, Fortify, which is also my EE trigger, because I make sure that I don't have lightning damage, which is why we're using Generosity together with our Wrath. And then we have Animate Guardian and Skitterbots. The Animate Guardian you can have, I don't even have him summoned, I forgot that. Animate Guardian, you can do that with a couple of different things. I did some funny thing with him and made him really tanky. Gave him a Kingmaker. Doesn't really matter for this build. I'd actually get more damage, arguably, out if I did the normal strat, which is using a Lair Cast, Dying Breath, Ambush Charge, Crusader Chainmails, or a Belly, or whatever chest piece you want, Victorious Flight, and Southbound Gloves. Because that means your minions get a 33% increased damage done. Because the Kingmaker, as you can see, has a very low radius. You see, there I'm getting it. See when he's moving away a little bit. You can see how I lose the Fortify buff. If you can move, please. You see that distance? It's not even touching me anymore. So it's not that good, to be honest. So 33% increased damage actually has a pretty big radius, which would actually matter. So that's something I would recommend, and that's also low budget. However, don't ever use the Animate Guardian until he's a little bit higher level. So last but not least, we're going to talk about the final support gems, and then the gems I'm using, and I'm going to talk about the gem level of Spectres, and then I'm going to show you some gameplay footage. Sorry about the rant. The skeletons, I'm using Summon Skeletons with GMP, Spell Echo, Elemental Focus, Minion Damage, and Pierce. The reason we're doing this is because we're using Mage Skeletons. So these fuckers will be spraying out projectiles everywhere, which is one of the bad things about this build. You won't be able to see shit. So they'll shoot a lot of projectiles, and without Pierce, they kind of shit on clearing. They're still okay-ish because of the nerf on the skeleton damage is noticeable, but they're still okay. Clearing with this build is a bit so-so, which is why I prefer the melee version, which is linked in the description below. Spectre is very simple. They have minion damage, they have concentrated effect, so we're using Ray Spectre. To get level 25, in this version, I would need to use a level 21 Spectre gem, otherwise you'll have 4 Spectres. I have Elemental Focus, Spell Echo, and Control Destruction. As you can see, the gem levels, my support gems are also low level. And then they have the remaining 2 supports from Conk Effect and Minion Damage from the helmet. I am using Baranite Thaumaturge. You can use Baranite Sisters, which were actually better to substitute the lack of minion damage, or sorry, skeleton damage from the skeletons for the sake of clearing, and the single target was about the same as the Thaumaturge. Both of these Spectres will be linked in the description below. They're called Baranite Sisters and Baranite Thaumaturge. You see here on the ground, we have, if I get there, Baranite Thaumaturge, let's get rid of that. And the top there, you can see Baranite Thaumaturge. Now, how the fuck do you get these Spectres? And that's pretty simple. Don't use them till you get the Conqueror spawning. I would suggest using something like Solar Guards. Till you get to this point, Solar Guards would use the same support gems. You don't need GMP for them. So just use Solar Guards till you start doing maps. And when you spawn Crusader, which is the red Conqueror called Baron, when you spawn him in an area, let's pretend that we get red area here in Tyrion's End. You would then run Tyrion's End till you have monsters influenced by Baron, and that will spawn these monsters. Now, you cannot desecrate them because they're spawning in the area. This is the bad thing about this. So you have to kill the monsters that are called Baranite Sisters or Baranite Thaumaturge, summon them in the map, and once you've done that, I would recommend leaving the fucking map immediately and bringing those Spectres to your hideout. Once you have them in your hideout, as long as you don't, log out or whatnot, they're persistent through logout. Just make sure that you summon the Spectres. If you want to try some other Spectres and you don't want to lose these, I would honestly just recommend having a secondary character, put a Spectre gem in, summon these Spectres in your hideout, and then test whatever new Spectre you want if you want to go back to them. It's really annoying, but that's how you do it. And you can use Solar Guards till you get these Spectres with the somewhat equal efficiency. I think that was it, right? I do believe that was it. So now we're going to show you a tier 16 map, and hopefully we won't get one shot at level 76. And since we're not block capped because of Necro Ages, it's a little bit squishier, and I'm only using 1 ring. So let's see how this feels. Don't have to precast anything like the enemy weapon builds. We're going to skip the Delirium because we're actually, fuck it. Well, let's do the Delirium. We're gonna do the Delirium. We might as well, right? So basically, you just summon these things. As you can see, not the greatest clear speed, but they're all okay considering the budget. And we have Betrayal in here as well. Let's see how that goes. So you see these little pools on the ground? That's the big damage you get from these Spectres. If you invest really heavily, you can... Oh, Jesus, fuck that. Okay, that ignites. Come on, come on, come on. A little bit low on the EHP for this map, I know. Let's see if we can do this. The trails were actually tough. Oh, looks fine. Manageable. Okay. Let's skip the Delirium because it's tier 16 at level 76. Anyways, so those little pools on the ground, when you spawn a Baron influenced enemy or map, those are the pools you want to look at. If you see those pools when you're clearing that map, then you've reached the point where these Spectres actually exist, and then you want to make sure you look on the ground for these Spectres so you can summon them. That's it. It's very straightforward, very simple. And with higher levels, we'll be able to get the clear speed up a little bit. I do believe the Baronite Sisters might be preferable because they help clearing much more than these guys do, which is something I'd honestly look into more. But I do like the way the Baronite Thaumaturge work. You can use Baronite Thaumaturge for clearing. I don't recommend it because when they do the pools, which is not scalable with less duration, I can tell you that, they don't actually pop up faster, which was my first original plan. Which is really frustrating, actually. Makes them a bit so-so with clearing, even when you put something like GMP on them. So for that purpose, I've actually skip that entirely and substitute the clearing with Mage Skeletons. Another approach for this could be to use standardized freaking zombies, which would arguably be even better, but it would also cost a bit more currency, because then you would preferably run something like Empower in that support, in that chest piece, before you bother doing that. It's definitely a possibility if you'd like to, but it's going to cost you a bit more currency. I want to keep the body down best I can. As you can see here, we're level 76. Oh, Jesus. Looking at the levels. We actually died. Did die. Let's do it again. The boss damage is okay. It's an okay boss damage, considering the low budget we've invested into this build. It's actually feeling really good. On the top of the fact that we're in an 83 map with monster and unique boss have 42% increased life, and we're level 76. So with this in mind, I'm actually very happy with the efficiency of this build. We will be doing the metamorph just for the sake of seeing how that works. As you can see, when the lightning thingy pops, that's where the big boss damage kicks in, and then the boss is gonna die pretty smoothly. And this is also a boss that's a bit tricky to get EE proc, because you want a shield charge on top of him, right? And that was it. Pretty straightforward. Let's not stand in that poison thingy. Alright, so let's see how this one feels. So I want to make sure you get EE up on him. Done. And then I want to stay away from him a little bit, if I can. Convocate, if he follows you, kill the guy with that modifier, so you actually can die. And it's not very hard. Again, level 76 doing a tier 16 map. And we're done. Died once though, it's my bad. Mistake. Bad play. That's a player issue, not a build issue. Alright, so that's it. That's a level 76 build clearing a tier 16 map in shit gear without a secondary ring. 4.2k life, but the block is covering. So, just to recap real quick. The build's cheap. If you want to have better single target and a slightly better clear speed, go with the melee skeleton version. If you want to do this, go for it. If you invest a lot of currency, I think this build can be really a lot more fun than the melee version, but you have to pay a lot more currency to do so. But this one works as a way to do so. You can skip all of this for better defense. You don't really need it. You can skip this if you want to get max block caps. Don't really need it. You can use this. You can also use this with for high body version would be to use like a rare shield with +2 minimum frenzy charges, +2 minimum power charges, and just go fucking crazy with double damage craft on the shield. You can go completely nuts if you want to. And that's really it. It's extremely straightforward. Everything else you need to know about this build is in the written form guide in the description below. That's it. And since my YouTube channel is actually official now, well, it's public, you guys actually can subscribe now, even though I don't get any monetization or anything. I will say, hit the like button, subscribe for more content, comment down below what you guys think of this approach, and until next time, stay safe and keep rocking, boys.